Hi there, everyone. This is Multi-Site is a Dirty Word. It's a case study of the church where I am the video production director, LCBC. My name is Ryan Geesaman, and as I said, I'm the video production director at LCBC. I'm also a writer for Church Production Magazine and Christian Video Magazine, and soon to be an adjunct professor at Lancaster Bible College teaching some courses in video production. Now, just to warn you, I've never done a WebEx seminar before, but so far it seems a lot like a conference call, which I've been a part of, and this actually seems like the best kind of conference call where I get to do all the talking. So I hope this is informative. So let's talk about the church where I work. This is LCBC, also known as Lives Changed by Christ. We're located in Manheim, Pennsylvania, and small farming community, not too far from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, not Lancaster, but Lancaster, and not too far from Harrisburg, the capital of Pennsylvania. The church started in 1986, coming up on our 25th anniversary. We're an independent Bible church, and we opened our first multi-site campus in 2007. Before that, we were just a single campus that opened in the middle of a cornfield. The transition from that one campus to multiple campuses is what we're going to be talking about today, specifically the technology end of that. So currently we're at 3 campuses. We have about 10,000 attendees on a weekend on average. And we are looking at 2 more campuses in the next 2 years, which will bring us to a total of 5. So let's just talk about multi-site and what that means in case there's anybody out there who doesn't know. Basically what we're talking about is having one originating campus in the center there, which is the live campus where there's a live person on the stage teaching. And then other sites, which are basically video sites. They take the recorded teaching from that originating site and play it back in some fashion to create another campus of that church with the same message, the same teaching. So the first thing that we had to do as a church was choose a multi-site model. There's a couple of different models out there. And so our leadership went and started looking around at seeing these different types of models. And the first thing is the number of video feeds. There's different ways to do this. One is to use one video feed, which is essentially your IMAG or image magnification feed. This is similar to how Willow Creek was doing it at the time, where they would just set up a screen in a new site, play back the image magnification or IMAG feed from the originating campus, and that was that. The other model is using 2 video feeds. This is the IMAG feed as well as a separate but synced HD lockdown shot. And what I mean by that is a camera that essentially does not move and is just a wide shot of the stage, and it's played back in a life-size fashion. So it gives the impression of a person standing on stage teaching to the audience. We're not out to trick anybody, but basically what it does is it shuts your brain off and makes you forget that you're watching video. Hard to explain unless you've experienced it. It literally, after 5 minutes, you forget you're watching video. And so this is sort of what North Point was doing at the time. And so if you haven't figured it out yet, we went with the 2 video feed model. The other factor is immediacy. How quickly does this turn around? So for instance, live. Life Church does this via satellite. Whatever's being done at the originating campus is immediately beamed over satellite and then viewed live at the other campuses. And then there's, of course, tape delay, in which it's recorded, somehow transported to another campus and then played back there. At the time, we had seen Metro Church doing this down in D.C., And they had a really interesting tape delay model where basically it was recorded at one campus. The tape was taken to a metro station. They got on the metro, got off at the next station, played it back, and sort of leapfrogged from campus to campus. That was interesting. And then, of course, there's a week delay where basically you record one weekend, you have a week to edit, get that prepared for the other campuses, and then the following weekend it's played back there. And at the time, this is what North Point was doing. They don't do that anymore. They actually have more of a live / tape delay model now, where they record the first service, they play back the first service live and then record that as well for the following services. So what we went with for LCBC was the 2 video feeds. You're looking at an image there of the demo we did when we first introduced this to our congregation. So that is actually a video, an HD shot there in the center of our stage, and then the synced IMAG on either side. And we went with a tape delay model. We didn't want to do the week delay, but we didn't want to have to put in the infrastructure up front to do live, and we didn't really have a need to because our originating campus has Saturday night services, and so we're able to record that and play those back then Sunday morning at our multi-site campuses. So let's look at the technology behind this, specifically for LCBC. At the demo, the demonstration we did for our congregation to get them sort of attuned to this idea of a multi-site church and how that would work. At the time, we used an uncompressed digital tape system. So both the HD and the SD were recorded on digital tape, and then we used a linear edit controller just to play those back, gang synced together, basically. We knew that this was not really ideal for us in the long term, just due to having to either copy that tape from multiple sites, or you need multiple record decks to get multiple copies instantly. And tape, of course, that type of tape is very expensive, and you can only use it a few times before you want a fresh tape. So for the demo, it worked. We knew it wasn't a long-term solution. So once we kind of went through that demo and funds were raised for our multi-site initiative, we kind of went forward and talked to our integrator, and they came up with some recommendations for us. The first system that was recommended was Capture on GVS computers. GVS is a company out of California. They basically make rack-mounted Macs. That's really essentially what they are. If you ask them, they will say they are not Macs. They are GVS, but essentially they are Macs, running Mac software that all of the Mac logos are changed to GVS logos. But that's beside the point. We'll get to my opinion on those later. And then they also recommended playback using Renewed Vision's Pro Video Sync software. So our assessment of this system was we were excited about a hard drive-based system. We were not interested in a tape-based system. It was nice to be talking about files and not tapes. We had some reservations about Pro Video Sync, really just because we had heard some problems that people had had, and it was a relatively new product at the time. When we were starting this, that was sort of the new thing out there, and we were a little bit hesitant to move into an area that we weren't familiar with or comfortable with. That being said, we really hadn't heard of GVS before, but our integrator, one of the guys there, had used them before and liked them. When we talked to GVS, I called them to make sure that we felt good about them. They actually offered a complete system. They said, well, we can do both your capture and your playback. Don't worry about this Pro Video Sync software. We can do the sync playback as well. And so we talked about it. We liked the idea of having one company to deal with. so that there would be no pointing fingers. Oh, well, it's their problem. It's not our problem. So we thought that would be the case. It was time code based, not QuickTime clock based, like the ProVideo Sync was. Liked using the professional standard of time code. And we trusted the company based on the trust of our integrator and their knowledge. So that first installed system then was capture on 2 GVS computers. The data was then transported on removable SATA hard drives, and it was then played back onto additional GVS computers using Virtual VTR Pro software. And the timecode sync came over USB MIDI boxes. So these USB MIDI boxes were connected to the GVS computers, MIDI cables to the other GVS computer, and timecode was sent over those cables. So the first signs of problems. The system didn't work when it got here. Actually, the technician from GVS had to stay an extra day because he couldn't get the system to work on arrival. The external drive bays that they gave for us to copy files to the SATA drives and move them back and forth were obviously handmade. Basically, they took a Dremel, dremeled out the front of an external drive bay, and colored in the exposed plastic with a Sharpie. So we weren't real excited about that. The procedures for capture and playback were complex and time-consuming. The files actually had to be both copied and transferred to these external drives, and you can imagine that these were large files, especially the HD. We were recording DVC Pro HD, but still a long time to transfer those files. And our playback was prone to skipping, which when you're looking at a 26-foot wide HD image, that jumping around like Max Headroom is not a real exciting proposition. So we went through basically a year of angry emails, phone calls, registered letters, talks with lawyers, and of course, you know, things are getting serious when there's registered letters and people are using snail mail. So we decided to scrap basically the first system with the GVS computers. Really, we're looking for some customer service from the company, but they weren't interested in helping us, so we worked with our integrator instead and worked out a deal where we basically got some discounts on a new system and some installs that we were doing, and I guess in theory it all worked out in the end. So our second system involved capture and playback on 2 Do-Re-Mi video disc recorders. If you're not familiar with these, Do-Re-Mi is a company that makes playback for movie theaters, for digital projection, and they also make some digital video disc recorders, just more for the professional broadcast arena. So very similar to capture and playback on a computer, but without all of the extra operating system, computer GAC. It looks more like a regular VTR, videotape recorder, and there's less stuff to go wrong, really. So originally, for this second installed system, we had a V1 HD for the HD content and a V1 DCT for the SD content, so still using 2 separate systems for the HD and the SD. Then playback was synced using LTC chase, or linear time code, just between the 2 machines. And transport then between our originating campus and our multi-site campuses was on removable SCSI hard drives. So the improvements over the old system were that it was much more simplified capture and playback procedures for the volunteers that were using the system. It eliminated the need to copy files. We were able to record right onto the SCSI hard drives, pull them out of the machine, and take them to the campus and play them back there. And we had predictable, reliable performance. We knew that when we hit play, it was going to play, and that was exciting. But we actually still had occasional sync glitches. There were times when it seemed like one of the machines got ahead of the other, and it had to stutter to get back in sync, which again, when you're talking about this type of playback, is not an exciting proposition. So we basically worked that way for a while until our next multi-site was scheduled to open and needed to do some more research. The reason was when we were talking about this next campus, we wanted to open our previous auditorium in our originating campus as sort of a test or an area where the people going to the new campus would be able to go for a few weeks, a month or two, to get together as a community, get to know each other. The volunteers would get used to the equipment and things that were going to be used in the new campus. So it was sort of a testing ground for the new campus. So we were gearing up in that West Wing auditorium, as we call it, and we knew that there was a possibility of going live in there. Just because we were in the same building, it was a matter of running some coax cable from one end of the building to the other, and we would be able to go live. But the prospect of going completely live scared us because of the complexity of the programming we do within our services. So we wanted to have some DVR functionality where we could record it live and play it back as it was being recorded. So Do-Re-Mi offers a line of machines called MCS, or multi-channel server, basically, so that you can have a record channel and a playback channel happening simultaneously. So we had purchased the equipment for that, and we're doing some testing, and actually realized that the way we were doing things with two machines using synced playback via time code wasn't going to work. And in order to actually pull that off, I figured out how to use the 3D functionality of the machines to use one machine, record both the SD and the HD, the SD being up converted to HD, and record them as the two I channels of a 3D stream. So we went from using two machines for one recording down to one machine. So we're using the V1 HD, the Do-Re-Mi V1 HD in its 3D mode. And the left eye is the HD, or I'm sorry, the left eye is the SD signal, or the IMAG signal up converted to HD. And the right eye is the HD from the wide shot, the lockdown shot. And then we have 8 channels of AES audio that we can record. The pros of this approach is that there is only one machine. There's one machine to buy and maintain for each site. There's one hard drive that needs to be transported for each site. And there's no time code sync issues because they're recorded in sync, they play back in sync. They're on one machine. There's no syncing between machines. And it opens up this possibility of DVR functionality if we need to use that in the future. The cons are that it's only 8 channels of audio, and you might think, only 8 channels of audio? What do you need all of that for? When we had 2 machines, we actually had 16 channels of audio. So we're down to 8 channels. Now, the reason we use so many audio channels, and I actually don't know of anybody else who does this, but it allows us to record individual microphones, individual loop channels from the band, a click channel from the band if necessary, if we're trying to do a synced video and band combination kind of a thing. It allows us a great deal of flexibility to be able to record things independently and then play them back independently at the campuses. If we were doing just a stereo mix from our originating campus, our hands would be tied in a lot of situations where they aren't by using these different channels of audio. So that's what's there. As far as additional cons, there's no inherent backup in the system. When we had 2 machines, we would always make sure that there was enough audio on each machine in terms of those individual 16 channels that if one machine would go down, we could just play back from the other machine. Of course, there would be things missing in terms of visuals, but in a pinch, that would work. And then there are some delay issues, and by delay issues, I mean frame level delay issues. Since we're using all of this up conversion and down conversion and things like that now, all of that processing adds delay to the video signal. So on our record side, we actually have audio coming in and being recorded on time, in real time. The HD signal is delayed by 1 frame simply because it goes through a frame sync in the HD switcher, and that delays it by a frame. The SD is delayed by 2 frames because it gets up converted to HD, which adds a frame, and then it goes into a frame sync as well, and that adds another frame, so that's delayed by 2 frames. So basically nothing is on time with anything else, even in the recording. We have now delayed our audio through our front of house board so that the audio is in sync with the SD signal. So SD and audio are 2 frames delayed from real time, and HD is delayed by 1 frame. So basically everything's off by a frame at this point. Then on playback, sort of the same thing happens. Audio is on time. HD actually is on time as well. And then SD is delayed by an additional 3 frames, and that's due to it now needs to be down converted for playback, and it goes through some additional frame sync processing through a switcher there. So there's a lot of delay that we have to sort of think through. So on playback, audio gets delayed again to make it match the IMAG feed. HD is actually a little bit off, but it's not noticeably so. So we just let that go for now. So that's sort of where we are at this point. So the lessons that we learned in our time working through this whole situation. Find a consultant who has done it before. We love our integrator, and we've actually had a great relationship with them over the years, and especially myself being in the video side of things. I love the video team over there, but we were sort of their first step into multi-sites, and we probably shouldn't have been, just from our standpoint. We also learned that you need to choose a technology that is working for someone else. We kind of went into it, and the people that were doing it well were using tape because that was tried and true, and we didn't want to use that. And I still think that was the right choice not to use tape, but we hadn't really found a technology that was working well for someone else. And so I would really suggest finding a technology that's working in the model that you want to do. Look at it, study it, make sure it's working well for someone else, and choose that. And your image, in terms of playback, is only good as your weakest link. In our situation, there's actually a few weak links. Our camera, because it was sort of what was available at the time, is a box camera from Panasonic that actually only records a 720 image and then up converts it to 1080. We should really upgrade to a 1080 camera, but I actually looked at or brought in a bunch of demos of cameras, but our projectors were weak enough at the time that there wasn't a significant difference. Now that we're looking at more campuses and possibly upgrading projectors, the deficiencies in the camera are becoming more obvious, and so if we get a better projector, we're actually going to see a worse image, which is kind of a strange concept, but you start to see those compression artifacts that are coming out of the compression from the do-re-mi, but also that's kind of magnified by the fact that the camera is up converting internally. So your image is only as good as your weakest link. So think through that as you pick the pieces of your system. And lastly, multi-site changes everything. everything about how you work with your volunteers, your volunteer needs, um, even the skill set that those volunteers need to have. The gathering structure changes. We've had to think through transitions to get those big HD screens up and down. We've had to think through, we used to be able to do songs or drama in the middle of a message, and that doesn't really work in a multi-site environment. And even just weekend preparation, getting ready for the weekend, there's a lot more planning and paperwork that needs to be done to pull this all off. So if you'd like to learn more about what I mean by multi-site changes everything, I actually have an article in the July 2011 issue of Christian Video Magazine talking about how multi-site, becoming a multi-site church changes everything about video production. So for us in the future, we're basically talking what will it take to go live between campuses. And the reason we're talking about this is because if one of our campuses ever needs to do a Saturday night service, how we're doing things right now will not work. Because right now we record our Saturday night service at the originating campus. So in order for that to even be feasible, we would basically only be able to record our 4:30 service on a Saturday night and have to immediately get it somewhere if they had, say, a 6:30 service. And that's pretty scary because right now it's nice to have those two services on a Saturday night, a 4:30 and a 6:30, and be able to choose the best one. But anyway, should the time come, we've actually looked at a couple of different things in terms of live technology based on things that other people have been doing. So the first is microwave, the second is satellite, and the third is IP or internet delivery. Microwave, for us, we have topography problems between some of the sites for our campuses. Mountains cause a problem when you're working with a signal that basically needs to be line of sight. There's leasing fees, especially if you have topography problems and need to bounce the signal off of some cell towers or things like that. Then you're talking about, leasing fees, leasing time on those towers, and then licensing fees. Microwave is one of those signals that you need a license to use. So then we kind of looked at satellite, the way Life Church does it. There's equipment fees there. It's actually fairly expensive to build an uplink. Downlinks are less expensive, but building that uplink to shoot the signal up to the satellite is fairly expensive. And then there's the ongoing bird time fees of leasing time on those satellites. And weather can be an issue. We kind of laugh about this because our auditorium was built with a flat roof, or flat rubber roof, and sort of the idea was, well, how many times can it really, pour down rain in the middle of a weekend gathering? You'd be surprised how often that can actually happen. So relying on the weather to be good during all of the gatherings is a scary proposition. So, of course, the wave of the future, or the wave of now, is IP delivery, and this is really something that continues to change every year. I've been to NAB a couple of times over the past few years, and every time you go out there are more and more companies doing IP delivery of HD content. For us, the issue with IP is that, like I said before, our originating campus was built in a cornfield. And so as far as infrastructure for bandwidth, the farmers out here don't really need that much bandwidth, not nearly as much as we do. And we actually have a hard time keeping up with the bandwidth of just our staff here in the office. So talking about needing, at least 10 megabits per second just for an HD and an SD video feed, and there we're talking about probably H.264 compression. that's going to be pricey, very pricey for us, whereas in maybe an urban environment that may be easy to come by. It's astronomical here. Bandwidth fees are astronomical. And as far as the requirements for the image, basically compression artifacts are unacceptable. Because we're projecting this onto a 26-foot wide HD screen, any sort of compression artifact becomes huge and hugely noticeable. And so right now, I mean, H.264 is a great compression in terms of quality versus bandwidth, but to get the bandwidth down to where we need it, there's still compression artifacts, and especially if you have any sort of hiccup in the bandwidth or the transport over IP, that can be a big problem. So we're still exploring this area of live and what that technology would look like for us. We're definitely leaning towards IP, but so far we haven't found the magic or the golden egg or whatever to solve this problem for us. So here is my contact information. If anybody wants to know more about what we do and how we do it, I'd be happy to talk to you. For those who are more technically minded, I'm actually going to, right after this, go through a little bit more of the technical specifications on our capture and playback system. If you're not as technically minded and don't want to hear all of the model numbers, thanks for paying attention and coming this far with us. Feel free to get in contact with me, and I will answer questions that you might have. So for those of you still with us, let's kind of talk about how we do what we do here. This is our capture station. This is how we capture our services for multi-site. I'm going to use the laser pointer here and kind of tell you what you're looking at. This is just a Mackie soundboard mixer for monitoring audio. But let's kind of go through what you're looking at. The one thing you don't see here is our camera. The camera that we use is a Panasonic AK-HC 1500. And like I said, it's a 720 sensor, but it does up-convert it and output a 1080 signal. We have a Canon 17X lens on that. The power of the lens isn't really that important in this sort of environment because this is the shot that camera is getting. You can see it's fairly wide. From there, the camera is actually connected to, back here you see this little Panasonic remote. That's a Panasonic AWRP55 remote. And that allows us to control the zoom and focus on that lens remotely, which is really nice to be able to set up the shot. We can't do pan, tilt, anything like that. We kind of set that and forget it. But as far as zoom and focus, it's nice to have that control from the back. We actually use a Manfrotto geared head on that tripod. Well, it's actually sort of bolted into our floor. But that Manfrotto geared head makes it nice to set the shot very, very accurately at the camera. From there, we have the Panasonic AV-HS300. This is the HD switcher. Has a few HD SDI inputs on it. We really only use a couple of them. Occasionally, we have an extra HD camera that we'll set up if we need to have two different HD shots to switch back and forth with, which happens with baptism for us, basically. We have a shot of the stage and then a shot of the pool. We also run our IMAG, our SD IMAG signal. I'll get to this, but the AGA FS1 down here up converts it, and then that signal comes through the switcher just so that it gets frame synced at exactly the same pixel rate as the HD image, because the do-re-mi boxes down here require that those two signals be picture locked to be able to do the 3D recording. So moving on, this little box here is our leader rasterizer. It's the LV7700. That allows us to do the waveform up here to be able to check our iris and that sort of thing. The iris is also controllable from this remote. Then we have our Sony LMD 2450W monitor up here. The nice thing about this monitor is all of the inputs that it gives you, and it actually allows a picture-in-picture. So we can do both our HD shot as well as our IMAG feed on the same monitor while we're doing the recording. We do have some Marshall monitors up here. This is the Marshall VR72P 2 HD SDI monitor, and that's basically showing the preview and program from the switcher. We also have a Marshall audio monitor, which is on the top of this rack down here. That allows us to both view the level and also, with some attached headphones here, solo the 8 different audio channels that are being recorded, which is really nice for the volunteers to be able to get in there and make sure that they're getting the pastor's mic, video, audio, audio from the band, whatever needs to be recorded on that specific weekend. And all that patching is done from our front of house board and then sent back over AES lines to the capture station here. Like I said, we have an AJA FS1 here, and that is basically just there to do the up conversion of the SD to HD right there in the rack. And then, of course, the Do-Re-Mi machines down here. You might be asking, well, if you're only using one machine to record, why do you have 2? Well, the reason is twofold. One is that we're able to do 2 recordings simultaneously. Currently, we have 2 campuses other than our originating campus, so we don't have to do any duplication. It also gives us a backup, a fail-safe, in case one machine dies in the middle of a recording or something like that. So those are down there. In the future, as we get more campuses, we will have to start duplicating those recordings, and they take about real time, actually, to transfer from drive to drive. That copy can actually be done internally in these machines. What else do we have? We have a Blackmagic Studio Hub, which you can't actually see. It's mounted under the desk, and that allows us to do a lot of routing. We use it mainly to route the different signals to this monitor. Usually we're monitoring the signal from this upper Do-Re-Mi machine, but using the Blackmagic Studio Hub, we're able to route the signal from this machine to the monitor as well. We also use a handful of AJA converters. The HD10C2 allows us to do an SDI to component conversion so that we can send one of the signals up here into the picture-in-picture window. And then the AJA HD10AM is an AES embedder and disembedder, which is super handy when you're doing these multiple audio channels. We use them all over the place, both in our capture rack as well as our playback system, which actually leads me to our playback system. Our playback system is much, much smaller and not as complex. Here's an image from one of our campuses. This is our video playback rack over here. And you don't see the Do-Re-Mi, it's actually lower here. But basically you've got your Do-Re-Mi machine playing back the 2 signals. We've got an image of the SD signal here, an image of the HD signal here. Those are basically coming straight out of the Do-Re-Mi to give them sort of confidence that the image is there. These 2 monitors then, and these are all Marshall monitors, these 2 monitors are preview and program for the Extron switcher. We use an Extron ISS506 switcher, which basically allows us to use a lot of computer signals without having to send them through scan converters and that sort of thing because it's all built in. It also has an SDI option that you can put into it, and so we use that to send our SD signal from the Do-Re-Mi through. Of course, the Do-Re-Mi signal first has to go through another AJA FS1 to down convert it to SD. and then it's sent here. And like I said, we also use the AJA HD10AM AES disembedder to get the audio off of the do-re-mi and to the front of house board via AES audio lines. And then as far as projection, for our HD image, we use a Barco FLM HD14 projector, which is it's basically a small VW in size. And then we use some Sanyo 500 or 5,000 lumen projectors on the side. As we're moving forward with more campuses, we're actually looking at the Barco RLM W8s. These are sort of smaller, lower-end Barco projectors, but what we're thinking about doing with them is using them a single one on the side screens and then double stacking them for the center HD shot. What we like about that is you've got one set of lamps in terms of what needs to be replaced, whereas right now we have to have spare lamps for these projectors and these projectors. It'd be nice to have a spare lamp that would fit any projector. Also gives us a bit of backup on this HD image. Of course, having the two projectors is ideal, but if one went down for some reason, it would be acceptable for a weekend to be using one projector. That's about it for my presentation. Let me go back here to my contact. Thank you so much for being with us today, and hope you found this informative and hope that you avoid the pitfalls that we fell into. And if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Thank you.